In this video, I am going to show you how to do a good and how to do a safe squat. If you haven't yet watched my introduction to Shaktilates, I go through the key principles of alignment taken from my Pilates training over 30 years. The importance of having your back straight is really key to doing a good and safe squat. So if you stand with your feet maybe hip width apart or a little bit wider, and let's just begin by loosening up the hips before we go into the squat. So soften your knees and let's just do some hip circles. So we're going to circle the hips, keeping the knees slightly bent. Don't worry too much. You might like to imagine the head of the femur, the top of the thigh bone, just moving within each hip socket. And then we can go the other way. And whilst you do this, try and relax your jaw, keep the spine long, but keep the belly soft. We don't need to do all this sucking the belly in all the time, unless you have a lower back pain or a major lower back problem. I generally don't teach people to suck their tummy in, maybe for beginners, but generally if you can find the length in your spine, that in itself by default will activate your deep abdominal muscles. And then from here, and I recommend you hold onto a chair, we can just very gently, and I say hold onto a chair just so you've got some balance, and you can just swing one leg forwards and back, keeping the collarbones nice and lifted, and then the other leg. So you might want to turn around and do the other leg. And then the next thing we're going to do is a little exercise, and again, do hold on to something because this isn't an exercise for balance. This is an exercise just to open up the hips, raising the first leg up, opening the leg out to the side, keeping the hips facing forwards, taking the leg behind you, and then back down. So you're making this circle with your knee, lifting the knee as high as you can, keeping the hips facing forwards. We'll just do one more, standing nice and tall, behind and down, and then the same with the other leg. So do turn yourself around. I'm going to use my lovely candelabra here, standing up tall, up, out and back. You may notice that one side is less mobile than the other side, but simply by moving the hip in the hip socket, you are bringing fluid into the hip. The synovial fluid is really helping you to keep mobile. It's a bit like oiling a stiff door. So any movement is really, really important, especially once you get over 45, 50, it's absolutely essential. So with our squat, keeping the back nice and straight, I want you to imagine a seat. I sometimes say to my clients, imagine a toilet seat that you don't want to touch. You're going to sit back. I'm going to put my hands in front just as a counterbalance. You're going to sit back as if you are aiming to sit on that toilet seat, but I want you to watch your knees. So look down at your knees for a moment, and you want to try and keep the knees on top of the ankles. Now, the lower you go, the harder you've got to work to come up. So if you can't keep your knees on top of your ankles, don't go down so low. So the weight is kind of shifted back. You've got the weight through the feet equally, but you're keeping the knees over the ankles. Now, to come up, you're going to push into your heels so that you activate your hamstrings. And people get very confused with bum work. You'll hear a lot of teachers talking about clenching the buttocks. But when we clench the buttocks, we actually throw the pelvis out of alignment. And that's not what we want. We want to keep the spine in its natural curve, which means the pelvis is hanging effortlessly. So the sit bones actually widen, the back stays straight, the knees stay over the ankles. The lower you go, the harder it is. But if you can't keep the knees over the ankles, if they're coming forwards, and especially you do not want the knees to go in front of the toes, make sure the knees are lined up so you haven't got the knees splaying out to the side, the back is straight, the collarbones are lifted, pushing into the heels to come up. Now your heels, through the fascial system, are connected to your sit bones, and your sit bones actually are your hamstrings. Those are the muscles that lift the bum. So you don't need to clench your buttocks. We want to get in to those hamstrings right up to the sit bones. Let's do one more. If you have a very weak back or a weak deep abdominals, I tend not to call the tummy the core, because I'm really absolutely on the core being through the whole body, like an apple core starting at the feet. When you sit back, if you've got a weak deep tummy or back, then just gently keep the tummy pulled in. Make sure the knees are over the ankles, not in front of the toes. The lower you go, the harder it is. The back is straight. Push into the heels to come up. You should really feel it right here in your bum. And if you have any questions, or if you want to send me a video of you doing a squat, please do so, and I will correct you and tell you what you need to work on in order to get a really good squat.